Is the collapse of consumer sentiment at a tipping point due to surging inflation? This is Devlyn Steele for Augusta Precious Metals, and today we'll be peeling back the layers of this potential financial crisis and more, so stay tuned. Before we begin, remember to like this video and subscribe for more economic updates. In a recent economic update, I discussed emerging signs of weakening consumer sentiment after a period when it seemed to be getting stronger. Well, last Friday, one of the economy's most prominent gauges of consumer sentiment, the University of Michigan Surveys of Consumers, saw its preliminary reading for October drop sharply from last month. The index fell 7.5% from 68.1 in September down to 63. That's well below economists' projection of 67.4 and the lowest reading since May. But as revealing as the drop is in the overall index, it is the data in the headline number that perhaps says even more. According to Surveys of Consumers Director Joanne Shu, assessments of personal finances declined about 15%, primarily on a substantial increase in concerns over inflation, and one-year expected business conditions plunged about 19%. Sure enough, Americans' one-year inflation expectations surged this month, jumping to 3.8% from 3.2% in September. Those expectations now are at their highest level since April. The big move in inflation expectations has potentially significant implications. That's because rising inflation expectations can actually bring about an increase in the inflation rate. When inflation expectations rise, there's the potential for consumers to try to get ahead of those perceived increases in two ways. One way consumers try to get ahead of increases is by making purchases today they otherwise might have delayed. There also is the potential for workers to ask for wage increases in an effort to offset the higher inflation they believe is coming. This can result in businesses raising their prices on the back of a surge in both demand and wage increases. Surveys of Consumers Director Joanne Shu noted, after stabilizing earlier this year, concerns about inflation have grown again. About 49% of consumers reported that high prices are eroding their living standards, up substantially from 39% last month and matching the all-time high last recorded in July 2022. Shu added, if these concerns continue to grow, consumer attitudes will keep deteriorating as well. In the assessment of nationwide economist Orrin Klatchkin, we don't see any potential catalyst for a rise in consumer sentiment in the months ahead. Weaker income growth, elevated interest rates, tight lending standards, and elevated inflation will continue to constrain sentiment. It's safe to say that the uncertainty that we have witnessed all year is here to stay, much like persistent inflation seems to be steering the ship. Stay tuned to this channel and hit the subscribe button to stay informed. Until next time.